Hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webcast. My name is Andrew Barber, Senior Contributing Editor, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Motorola. It's titled, Chardon Local Schools Connects Directly to First Responders with an Instant Line of Communication. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to take a few moments to highlight just a couple of items. First, today's event will be recorded. In a couple of days, we'll send you an email that will contain a link to the recorded event, and you will also be able to download a PDF of the presentation at that point. And second, please ask questions. Don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the Submit button. I hope we'll have 10 or maybe 15 minutes at the end when our speakers can answer your questions. We also have a chat function, which can be launched via the brown group chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Use chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eSchool News team with any technical issues or other concerns. However, please don't use the chat function to ask the speakers questions. They just won't have time to monitor the chat. If you have a question, please use the Q&A panel instead. With that out of the way, let me introduce today's speaker. Patrick Hobby is President and CEO of QDS and SchoolSAFE Communications based in Colorado. He's held a variety of positions during a 15-year career at Motorola and has more than 28 years of experience with all types of public safety, E911 communications, interoperability systems, and procedures. Dr. Michael Hanlon is Superintendent of the Chardon Local Schools in Ohio with approximately 3,000 students and an annual budget of $30 million. Prior to his appointment in Chardon, he served for 15 years as superintendent of the Painesville City Schools, and earlier in his career, he was an elementary school principal and a sixth grade teacher. Our third speaker, Sheriff Dan McClelland, has served GEAUGA County continuously for nearly 39 years as a member of the Sheriff's Office. Over the years, he has held every rank in the department, beginning as a deputy in 1976, through to his election as sheriff in 2004, 2008, and again in 2012. He has won numerous awards and commendations for his work in law enforcement. Welcome to all of you. It's an honor to have you here today. Patrick, why don't you get us started?
Okay. First of all, I want to say thank you to Mike Hanlon and Dan McClelland for your time today to further commemorate this solution, SchoolSAFE by Motorola. And with that, I'm going to start to move into the agenda. And first off, SchoolSAFE as a network, we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to kind of examine briefly a simplistic view of the E911 call process. Then we'll talk about the SchoolSAFE solution, how it works, hardware, software, and training, and then ultimately certified ready schools. So the reason that we characterize the solution and bring it to the marketplace as a network is because there is a physical networking of licensed radio channels that we're identifying and setting in place in terms of hardware and equipment and running as a physical network for mission-critical communications. The pictorial that you can see on the screen is kind of encapsulating all the various elements and pieces between police, fire, EMS, schools, and district personnel, and the E911 dispatch center, and how all that comes together to accomplish interoperable communications and save seconds, during a response. The network implementation itself starts with those licensed channels. It starts with identifying what everybody has or doesn't have, and then setting forth to put in place the right infrastructure. We call this, again, the physical network, and our software solution is basically network management. How do we control it? How do we use it effectively? And what we've done is we've developed a whole curriculum that is applied to a safety team formation and development process, school by school by school, and then across the district, and doing so relative to the public safety agenda for the best possible response. And so then through that process, one of the also very most necessary steps is sustainability of the solution, and that involves maintainability. Hardware, software, and training must be maintained and needs to be owned up to with the various groups. And so the ultimate goal is certified readiness, putting in place a procedure, putting in place a memorandum of understanding and SOPs and SOGs, the type of tools that public safety is accustomed to for how safety services are provided to the public. So I'm going to just kind of step through a 911 call process, basically, and this is simplified, because there's basics, and then there's always situational differences about where the call is coming from and things like that. But basically, that's the trigger for us. That's when we are ready to roll, and so we'll talk a little bit about that timeline as I go here. But basically, what we're trying to accomplish is being able to provide situational-based information very effectively, directly, using the right tool for the job, two-way radio, for delivering and receiving those messages. Could be there's two people involved instead of just one, or we heard shots fired 15 minutes ago, but we haven't heard anything since. And again, it's very situational. If it's a EMS and medical only related incident, something like an event of that nature, then the actual information would be different. So basically, what we're doing is we're looking at making that call process go much smoother, to where we're shortening the time space of the middle manning and the repeat and resay and that kind of stuff, allowing field command to go direct with the school team that's ready, that's capable and demonstrated that way, and then building on the actual curriculum and training for the schools, and then applying that through actual exercises and such. So how does it work? Basically, what the physical network is doing is it's bridging together local area radio with wide area radio. And so back on this right tool for the job concept, basically local area radio meets the needs of a couple of custodial staff, for example, that are going to work with a lunchroom to ready that space for a wrestling tournament later that day. And so that kind of communication is very, very necessary in that day for that school, is best served when the radios that are being used for that hour or however long that event of readiness for the wrestling tournament is going to take is just direct and not going through radio infrastructure that's been put in place for district services like transportation, and certainly not the kind of comm communications that you would want, through public safety infrastructure and such. So the solution hardware is providing connectivity, providing a connection between local area radio and wide area radio, and doing so in a broadcast-only functionality. So we're not taking that audio and converting it to IP technology and then sending it over networks and the internet. All of our audio is local, and it's combining wide area radio with local area channels. So the physical network gets optimized to achieve optimum coverage and capability for that success of that communications. basically, how does it work? The local area radio is bridged together with the wide area radio, and then your school, and our focus is the school itself and a safety team there with district personnel that are also spooling up, ready to, part of the response to that school, and then, of course, professional public safety, again, with wide area radio needs being bridged in. One of our agendas with this physical network and network management is to keep that group very tight. We just want the boots on the ground. We want the people who have information that's relative to the scene to be able to communicate effectively with the responders that are involved and can impact that scene. So we're not trying to bring in 14 or 15 or 25 or 75 other people from a state, for example. We're trying to keep it tight and keep it very functional. So basically a technology tower gets installed at every school, and that tower looks kind of like you can see on the slide here, and I'll come back to that a little bit, but that's a hardware piece, and we'll talk a little bit about what that physical device looks like and what it's doing. But this is in the category of hardware, software, and network management and that kind of thing. And so basically, when dispatch logs into the system or is continuously logged into the system, the software looks like what I have up for you right now. The question is who can turn it on and off. That's basically part of the SOP or part of the agreement of how that needs to work. And typically, public safety doesn't want anybody just coming up over one of their radio channels in a we need help type of a form or fashion. And so this has to be a controlled thing. And that's part of the procedure. That's part of the the understanding of the program and how the curriculum overlays to, we have awareness, operability, and interoperability type curriculum that is applied to the public safety piece, but to the school and district piece as well, and it's different in each case. And so who can turn it on and off? It's based on that initial trigger that gets this very first part of the situation to become known. What we're driving for is illustrated on the next slide, which is a timeline of events. Basically, this is where we live in the first seconds of an event of any kind that rolls up to a 911 call, of starting to get that response going for that event. So we have incident affected the school, 911 call placed, units assigned, determination made to use SchoolSAFE. This is where we live, and we strive to this whole first piece of activation can happen very, very effectively in the first 30 seconds of an initial call that's relative to a school when we have done our job and we have training in place and people know what's going on. So this is a look-see of the equipment, the physical network that gets installed at the school. It's network-enabled, it's remote-controlled, and, there's physical radio gear in there. The software of how it looks gets optimized school by school and then gets optimized for the dispatch center on how they want to see the schools and or districts. We have basically school view, district view, state view, county view, E911 PSAP view, and these different views are the customization parts that are put in place so that it's very, very, very simple. So public safety dispatchers are only looking at a screen that has the schools alphabetized. They pick it, they turn it on, and it just goes that simple. So the curriculum is quite extensive. It's annual, and it's broken into the various groups that are part of interoperability relative to the school and district. So we've got, everything from the very beginning of an understanding of process and for handling incidents, ICS, NIMS and ICS knowledge, and then it goes through establishing radio the high-value 911 call as opposed to what is known to be, 911 call process local to PSAPs. And so we come in and we work to try to affect that call process and get it to be as optimized as possible through the curriculum. And then the higher level curriculum, like the 300 and 400 level coursework, is more related to the actual sharing of intel and who needs to be involved, how to keep it tight all the way through the process so that it's very effective. Scene management comes into play. Schools, of course, are large populations, and schools and district resources can help with a 911 call response very effectively at just managing their own population and knowing when and where and how the public safety is going to need things to look when they get there. So where I'm at basically is to the
Copy that. What is
start
your emergency?
Of our
there is an irate parent threatening
a brief movie that was part of what took place in Chardon.
I copy
Please
that.
So let's see, where are we at? Are we getting good first report information, first responders?
We talked about, with the size of the campus, pinning down a little bit better of an exact location as whether we're at the top or we're at the bottom. And they're getting better with the communications and starting to delegate the task assignments.
We'll try again. We're going to do smoke in the gym.
Emergency.
Copy that. What is your emergency?
There is an irate parent threatening the principal in his office.
I copy that.
So let's see, where are we at? Are we getting good first report information, first responders?
We talked about, with the size of the campus, pinning down a little bit better of an exact location as whether we're at the top or we're at the bottom.
The high-level view for certified readiness involves partnership. It involves training, policies, hardware and software, practices, and exercises. The whole idea is to have schools that are certified ready for interoperability. And that's a local certification that involves keeping the system maintained, hardware, software, and training so that public safety and all those stakeholders are totally on board. And that's been our goal in Chardon Schools. And again, thank you very much. And I'm going to turn over now to Mr. Mike Hanlon.
Thank you, Patrick. Bear with me for one moment here. I'm trying to load the slide up. There we go. Again, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of the implementation of SchoolSAFE in the Chardon Local Schools. Just a little bit about our school district background information. As was mentioned previously, we're a school district of approximately 3,000 students. We have 4 elementary schools, 1 middle school, 1 high school. Our geographic area in our school district is about 88 square miles, so we are fairly well spread out, a larger community, some rural and some city-based. We also have 3 areas within our school district, a couple of areas that are covered, one by a city police department, the Chardon Police Department, another area that is covered by the GEAUGA County Sheriff's Office. So we had to develop some articulation among those entities as well as the various fire responders that work with our schools to make sure that we had an articulated communication plan within the overall implementation of SchoolSAFE. As was mentioned by Pat previously, we do utilize the SchoolSAFE radio system in our schools on a day-to-day basis. for all of the daily operations of our school. It could be anything from custodial to just the various needs that arise during the day. But then within our school district, we also see other unique challenges that occur where SchoolSAFE gets put fully into play, as was illustrated previously. I can think of a case that happened earlier this school year where a sixth grade student with no known medical history went down with a seizure in a classroom. It was prompted a 911 call, and we used SchoolSAFE exactly as was illustrated previously to respond to that particular concern, provide information to the first responders as they were arriving at the school, and we were able to control everything from the medical condition of the student to the optimum door for the first responders to arrive to make sure that we brought treatment to that student immediately. Within the scope of our implementation, we have approximately 250 radios distributed among the various buildings in the school district. The radio users are, as I mentioned, distributed throughout the school, but we also have within each school building, as a component of our training, the creation of incident control teams. Those ICT members are typically our building principals, building secretaries, assistant principals, custodians, those people that are out and about in the building all day and are freer from regular classroom responsibilities, that are able to, and typically pressed into service when we do have an incident that occurs at the school. Those are the individuals that are part of that initial incident control team, and they are have been trained in the protocol for handling those particular incidents so that we have effective communications going on, not only among the ICT members, but then out to the first responders as they may be responding to our particular site. The MOTOTRBO radios are the radios that we have implemented in the school district, and again, as we've discussed previously, we use those for all of the regular day-to-day responsibilities in our building. And an important thing that we've learned in our school district is that Chardon Schools, unfortunately, back in 2012, went through a school shooting. And what we learned through that experience is that cellular devices and other lower-powered radio devices tend to be overwhelmed pretty quickly during those particular incidents. The features of the MOTOTRBO radio and the SchoolSAFE system give us a much more stable and reliable communication platform in the district than we previously had. Again, as another aspect that I would speak to, and it was demonstrated previously, is the ability to create the bridging. And as Pat described, while the first responders control bridging to the actual units that may be responding to a site, our building administrators and I have the ability to create bridges among the facilities within our school district. So, for example, if I wanted to bridge the middle school and the high school for a particular evacuation exercise, I have the ability to do that right from my desktop, and the radio systems in those two buildings are communicating to each other, and those building administrators and ICTs have the ability to talk to each other as they implement that particular program. Another aspect that has been mentioned previously, but what I can emphasize, is the impact of the SchoolSAFE training. We committed approximately 3 days of training to have our incident control teams and extended staff in each school building sit down along with our first responders, and they were, again, all of the local first responders, the sheriff's office, police department, fire departments were all very gracious to have their staff involved in that training, and it was an excellent curriculum for us to go through, from the first phase being the awareness of the radio systems and how those work, to the concepts of operability within our sites, and then the highest level implementation, the interoperability as we interface with first responders to our particular building. We, in addition to that curriculum that allowed us to become a certified site, we have continued to extend that training and practice as we have moved forward as a district. So to give you an example of that, most schools across the nation are required to conduct some form of safety drills on a regular basis. We incorporate now SchoolSAFE radio scenarios into those safety drills that we conduct. So we use them to actually process through, follow the protocol, make sure that staff had the experience with how to implement that in the face of a real emergency. And we also take that one step further because our first responders actually maintain that strong commitment to the system. They play a role in those safety drills that we have going on and actually interface through SchoolSAFE. We create a bridge, and they get the experience of what it's like to turn that bridge on, what it's like to talk to the officers or others that may be responding to site, and when to turn that off when the incident's been handed over to the proper authorities. So, we have a strong commitment to that, and we continue that as we move forward. I would definitely say that since the implementation of the radio system, that our operability within the district has increased significantly, and we've had a tremendous positive impact through the implementation of SchoolSAFE in the district. At this point, I'll hand it to Geauga County Sheriff Dan McClellan for his comments from the public safety perspective.
Thank you very much for that. Having worked in law enforcement for approximately 39 years, I've come to realize the tremendous importance that communication plays for first responders. Without the ability to communicate, we cannot coordinate our response. The two absolutely must go hand in hand. But in order for a radio system to work effectively, it must have several characteristics. The first is it must be reliable. We need to be able to count on the radio system in all types of weather, in all types of conditions. It's vitally important that when we need it, it works. The second important aspect is we have to have excellent coverage. There can't be dead spots or areas geographically or potentially inside buildings where the system can't reach and the system doesn't work. We need to be able to talk everywhere. Interoperability is the next important aspect. There are times when law enforcement needs to talk to other law enforcement, or law enforcement needs to speak with fire, rescue, and vice versa, as we often combine our resources in response to emergencies. The radio is clearly public safety's lifeline. As much as the public uses 911, a call to 911 to get help and to get assistance, public safety uses a call on the radio to summons the additional help, the additional resources that we need to address an emergency. Clearly, a radio is the right tool for this job. It allows us to manage our workforce, to keep tabs on where our resources are, our personnel, what they're doing. It can be valuable when you send someone out, just as we put it, surveillance, but keep an eye on something, and they can report back, provide up-to-the-minute information for others responders as they're approaching the situation. Situational awareness, being able to communicate that we might have a potential problem coming up, is again something we do with the radio. Geauga County's public safety radio system is a reliable Motorola system that allows us to do all of those things I just spoke about. The SchoolSAFE solution with public safety was an important next step for us. We were looking at an opportunity to bridge or connect school radios directly with first responders. Potential concern, potential thoughts about this: are we going to be listening to school bus drivers? Are we going to be listening to calls to the janitor and different other things? And quite frankly, no, that does not occur. It does not occur because schools and their day-to-day functions are not on our main emergency services radio channel. The dispatch center has total control over the bridge. In other words, they can turn it on or off, and more importantly, they can connect it with those entities that need the bridge. SchoolSAFE actually is an extension of our radio system when we bridge the two together. Having the ability to communicate with an entire district or individual schools, depending on the situation, can be vitally important in ensuring everyone's safety during an incident. The interoperability workshop was an important part of the implementation of the system. While putting the hardware, the radios, out into service, it was important that those who used them, both emergency service providers and school personnel, understand the operation and each of their roles with the new system. First responders participated in the workshop, and we found that this was very, very important. Besides meeting everyone, we do feel that it did help the teams begin to work together, and that understanding, even in the training, that we're in this together, and that we're going to work hard as a common force now, a joint effort, if you would, involving school personnel and safety forces to accomplish the mission, to take care of the emergencies that might exist. The benefit of SchoolSAFE to public safety, very obvious. We have the ability now to get immediate information about an emergency. Imagine, if you would, a bee sting, a student, a young child, having an emergency on the playground. The call is placed. It's a 911 call. The call goes to dispatch. Dispatch relays that information via radio to an ambulance. But there's a decision made to bring the child inside the building. That movement can be immediately reported to the responders, that you now need to go in the main entrance to the nurse's station as opposed to the parking lot. It becomes even more critical when you deal with violence in a school situation. As we learned, unfortunately, in 2012 at Chardon, having current, accurate, up-to-the-second information can greatly impact where resources are sent. Where do deputies or officers respond to? Which door might they use? And information like this can be very critical. We have worked very closely with the schools on safety plans now, and not just drills, not just lockdowns, but incorporating the radio system and the use of the radios and the bridging into these drills. This real-time exchange of information during an emergency is critical, a critical feature. With that, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. And again, the SchoolSAFE, the bridging, has provided us a very necessary tool for us to use in dealing with those unfortunate emergencies that may occur at our school. And as much as we'd like them to not happen, it is imperative that we be prepared for the if and when they do.
Well, thank you so much, Sheriff, for your insights from the law enforcement side. And we have still 20, 25 minutes or so for any questions, and we do have some questions coming through. And I want to thank also Michael and Patrick for their comments earlier on. let's get to the questions now. And Michael, I'm going to turn to you first. At least from Chardon's point of view, when you installed the system, how did you make the decision about who on campus gets the radios, and how did you work through that whole situation?
Yes, that's a great question. First off, the initial members of our incident control team were those people that were typically on our safety response teams in previous school safety plans. These are people that generally are moving about the building or do not have a classroom responsibility, principals, secretaries, custodians, other people like that that have more access to the building. The second thing that we attempted to do was then to create a safety perimeter within the building using kind of a system of going around, physically around the building and assigning radios around the exterior and kind of key locations in the building so that we created a safety net, if you will, within that building. So those were the two steps to determine placement of the radios. The other piece that I would mention is that when we went through the implementation, we had to think a little bit about the use of channels. Obviously, you don't want radio talk to interrupt instruction in a classroom when it's radio discussion of needing a delivery of paper or something like that. So we had to develop a system where classroom radios were on one channel, but when the incident might be occurring, that there was then an assignment of responsibility to go to that channel and instruct classroom radio holders to switch over to the emergency response channel. So we had to think through that aspect of it as well.
Okay. All right. Now, Michael, let's stick with you for this next question, and then Sheriff McClellan, maybe you could also chime in on this. How has having interoperability between schools and public safety impacted that relationship? What effects have you seen?
Initially, I would say that we enjoyed an excellent working relationship with our first responders prior to the implementation of SchoolSAFE, and I would add that this has only strengthened that working relationship. I think that having, as the discussion of the safety drills and safety scenarios has been outlined during this presentation, that continues to build discussion about how we can ensure safety within our school buildings and work together to think about the eventualities that might happen in a school safety scenario. And so that relationship has only grown stronger through the ability to communicate more effectively.
And I would absolutely agree with you, sir. We did enjoy an excellent relationship, a sharing of information, et cetera. But the SchoolSAFE radio system has added to that. Again, because of drills, because of our respective roles in the community, we certainly were aware of each other. We knew each other. But to be able to have that ability to immediately talk and share information and help ensure a more prompt, appropriate response, whatever the emergency was, has greatly enhanced that. I'd like to add that a lot of my employees, a lot of deputies here at the Sheriff's Office, as well as other officers within the county, we have family that attend these schools as well. And there's a little bit more confidence as parents, not necessarily as police officers here, but as parents, knowing that that instant communication, that effective ability to get information to those who need it when they're responding to an emergency is a tremendous peace of mind.
Perfect. Well, Sheriff, let me stick with you with one follow-up. During the presentation, you talked about how dispatch makes the decision about when to turn the bridge on, and then it has the ability to define which groups it bridges to. Did you, when you install the system, do you have to develop a set of protocols for dispatch as to when those bridging decisions are made and how they're made? How did you handle all of that?
We obviously had training with regards to how to establish the bridge, etc., the mechanics of it, if you would. But we use much the same criteria that we use when dealing with other emergencies. Our dispatchers are authorized to connect both for request, should it be the school request, or law enforcement or fire need to get information to the school as well. I can see where not just a response to school property, but a situation nearby, a neighboring home, a neighboring business, up the road, a situation where we need to get effective, clear information to the school concerning that situation, could be a place where we institute the bridge and not just the school calling for it. So I would say it's probably a general rule of thumb. It's common sense. When either side needs to know what's going on with the other, we use the bridge.
Great. Well, thank you for clarifying that. Patrick, why don't we come back to you, and we have a question from the audience about how many schools or districts are participating with SchoolSAFE right now. And then a follow-up to that would be, would districts or schools in close proximity to one another be able to join together to participate in SchoolSAFE?
Yes. Well, again, I guess on the last part of that question, there's a practical layout of schools and districts and a structure already in place physically, and the SchoolSAFE system deployment is following those lines that are already drawn, where 911 calls are going to go first, and then where they're going to go secondly if there's a secondary dispatch center involved. And so it's very much a local set of questions and answers. A local decision needs to be made. And those questions and answers are part of this curriculum. We're working right from the very first conference call to discuss implementing the SchoolSAFE network. We're starting the thought process of, well, how do we need this to work? How do we need it to work? Because at the end of the day, we're going to fly back to Colorado, and Motorola's there. That this is a local solution. Dan and Mike and the staffs that are in place, that are parents in the community, they have a very, very strong feel. For example, the solution there in Chardon also involves private schools, completely private schools that are, not all managed by a single district. And so, that impacts decisions about, well, how does this system need to work? Do we want to have separate login processes because it's a private school, or can a private school be part of the alphabetical listing for a district that it's geographically within? And so you might have a PSAP or a public safety entity say, well, absolutely, my folks just look at that school as an alphabetized different school on the list, and we don't want to have a separate system. And yet, if you go to another area of the state or of a county, being separate might make a complete sense. So flexibility is part of the SchoolSAFE network implementation.
Right.
The first part of the question.
Sorry, keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
Real quickly, the first part of the question was relative to our beginnings and what we have installed, and this is where we are with the solution was formed and developed and established here in Colorado. We've got roughly 236 systems installed here in Colorado. We've got an entire state implementation process. We've deployed the system as a statewide network. We have all the districts and all the schools in it, over 2,000 and over 200 districts. Not all 100% deployed, but in some state or some part or beginning of that deployment. Anyway, I believe that was the first part of your question was, how or where this is deployed. Go ahead.
No, that's great. Well, thank you for covering it. You did mention how private schools might be pulled into a more sort of collaborative arrangement. What about a standalone system? One of the audience wanted to know is this a solution that would be suitable for a small private school with just 100 students in it?
Yes, very much so. We have several deployments that are of that nature. The real implementation is focused on saving seconds in a response, and that occurrence, is why the system needs to be flexible and needs to be able to be deployed in a manner that professional public safety resource deployment is already geared to provide services to that particular private school and such. So, yeah, we deploy the physical network, technology towers, and the master site controllers in a methodology to support small, medium, and large deployments. Like I said, from a single campus, private school location, all the way to a statewide deployment. Dispatch can initiate the bridge as well as regardless of the size of the school, basically.
Okay. Patrick, maybe we could start with you on this question. I don't know if Michael wants to chime in later, but I think maybe we just also need to clarify once again some of how the bridging occurs and who is able to participate. And so, when the school patch network is up and running, are we correct in assuming that 911 dispatch can communicate with the school, and also can the first responders with their own radios communicate directly with school staff? Is that correct? There seems to be some question about exactly who is able to talk to whom.
The answer is yes, absolutely correct, that channels are selected and agreed to about where the interoperability needs to occur. Typically, there's a channel for the school itself, licensed radio channel. There's a channel for the district, usually called an operations channel or a security channel. And then there's a public safety channel that usually will exist already in some form or fashion. We're usually deployed on a mutual aid channel or a tactical interoperability channel, maybe a RIC channel or an emergency channel, as some of the names that are typically how we find them, and then they become the SchoolSAFE channel that is used. And this is part of training so that the actual officers that could be different on any given day or situation are aware of where that interoperability can occur on their channel plan, on their radio right on the belt. And so that's a very important piece to this, is how we build it. The decision makers need to be involved, and then how we deploy it and how we train accordingly. I guess to sum it up, 911 dispatch initiates public safety bridge to the district and all schools. District can initiate school-to-school and school-to-district bridges.
Perfect.
Andrew, if I could jump in there.
Sure, go ahead, Michael.
Thank you. I noticed one of the questions also related to whether or not there was concern about when that bridge was created, if there would be too much traffic on the school's end, people stepping all over each other to communicate. And what I'd like to emphasize that I think is really important, and we practice this, is that when that bridge is created and the school radios can speak to the first responders, for example, the case where the student went down with a seizure, the nurse was in the classroom speaking to the ambulance EMS as they were responding to the scene at the school and telling them what was going on. But we really are able to control the school end of the traffic by our training protocol, which really emphasizes that we have an incident control team and an incident control manager. So once that event is occurring, there's an incident control manager that takes command of the situation, and they are the primary radio traffic, and they're talking to the other people that are involved on the radio and getting information or assigning duties and tasks, but they are the manager of that particular incident. They serve as the, if you will, the traffic cop of all of that radio traffic that might be happening around the incident. And we drill the staff to get them to understand that, the incident control manager is the person in charge of the event. And if they're not talking to you, you're not talking to them, wait and make sure that we have relevant information so that we're handling the flow of information very well. And I think that's an important piece when that bridge is created. That's how we control it.
All right. Michael, let's follow up from there, and then Patrick, maybe you could talk more generally about this. But can you talk about how long the installation and training took from the beginning of the installation until it was ready to go? I know that you're in a district with 3,000 students, and perhaps afterwards Patrick can talk about maybe the range in other areas, smaller districts, larger districts. But what happened in Chardon in terms of getting ready and getting it up and going?
Certainly, it was very efficient. The installation of the equipment, I think, was accomplished in all 6 of our buildings in about a 2-week span, give or take. And we have some older buildings, so they had to deal with some of the mechanical idiosyncrasies of buildings that are fairly old, and now there was a lot of legwork prior to that to make sure that we had the ability, how many repeaters did we need, for example, in the high school, or how many towers did we need in the high school to make sure we had adequate coverage, because that's a larger facility. So they did the background work, but the actual installation was about 2 weeks. And training, the primary commitment was about 3 days worth of training, and then from there we have continued to do that, support that and sustain that on our own.
And just to chime in, exactly right with Dr. Hanlon is the implementation. It involves doing a little bit of analysis work up front relative to the implementation from the frequency issues, because we can get into a waiting period to get license channels in place if and where they're not. And then, but the physical network can go in fairly quickly. We've got an install and we've got to optimize at each building, and then we start to deploy the training. Part of that answer as well is relative to our deployment and our solution development with Motorola involves, formation and development of resources that are a ready team to work with the Motorola infrastructure. Because the solution is very local. We're not local here in Colorado to Ohio, and so through the Motorola partnership, we were able to tag in and work with a local solution provider that is a Motorola partner, and then we could, get this information we needed to do design work up front and plan for the installation and train and work with the Chardon Communication Services organization that we could work with for that deployment and for that install and everything else, and as well training. And so that's a key role and a key part to the listeners to know that we understand very well that this is a local solution and that it must be deployed locally, and fully supported locally. And so hats off to Motorola in recognizing what we had done here in Colorado and helping us build this North America-wide program.
Patrick, for this next question, I'll address it to you, and maybe Sheriff McClellan, you may have some experience with this as well. But one of the audience members wanted to know about how you eliminate dead spots. In their situation, they have a Motorola system that covers 348 square miles of the county with several towers, and they have dead spots inside most of their schools, particularly in 2- and 3-story schools. Do you have a solution for how they can get around that?
Yes, and very specifically, when you start to evaluate and make recommendations on how to improve coverage for a wide area system, the deployment is based on towers. It's based on FCC licensing, information about what's available and how strong the signals are, and so we have to analyze that local location and what everybody has, and then focus on that building specifically. We recommend a bidirectional amplifier type of solution for general public safety based radio enhancement, and public safety backbone expansion, if and where needed. But then, we're also focused on bringing together wide area radio that's already to some extent deployed by public safety with wide area radio that may or may not be already deployed by a district for district-wide services such as food service, transportation, maintenance and operations, and security. And so Motorola has a deep portfolio of wide area solutions that are feature-rich for those specific platforms. For example, Dan's public safety community radio system needs are different feature sets and different coverage requirements than the district, for example, transportation for the district. So anyway, our solution brings that all together at the actual building site. And so if radio doesn't work inside the building itself, that's one of the first things we're identifying and bringing the need for solution improvement or development there to fix those problems. In many cases, part of the SchoolSAFE solution and or in advance, so that we already have excellent radio to work with at that location. Bidirectional amplifier solutions, and then also the SchoolSAFE system in and of itself with the technology towers, we can provide better coverage as well using, and this gets kind of technical and engineer-based, but in-band repeat and things with additional radio deployment at the school. We can, just, for example, achieve 95% or better coverage for public safety on a localized, tactical-based channel, and we can, tie that with a wide area channel that we can get signal off the roof of the school, for example. So it gets kind of compound, complex when you get into radio design, at least for our call here today. But we definitely have a lot of flexibility and a very good set of recommendations to make in those areas.
All right. Well, we have probably time for one. Sorry, Sheriff, did you want to pipe in?
No, I was just going to chime in a little bit with that. I think that the concern over dead spots or radio coverage, those are addressed in the planning and in the engineering stage of the program. Whether you have a wide area system, as the safety forces may use, Geauga County is a little over 400 square miles. We have a radio system that provides us coverage throughout that. We also have equipment in place, for example, in our jail, which is a challenge at times for radio signals to penetrate properly, just by construction, electronic needs, other sources of interference. And we've used engineering and hardware equipment to ensure that even in a difficult situation like a jail, that we have communications there as well. So it's part of the planning up front process.
All right. Well, thank you for adding that. And that is all the time that we have left today. We've gone through the entire hour. If we didn't get to your question, someone from Motorola will follow up with you directly to provide you with an answer. So as we wrap up, I want to thank Patrick Hobby, Dr. Hanlon, and Sheriff McClellan for their excellent presentations and for a very interesting Q&A session at the end. And I'd also like to thank Motorola for its support. One final reminder, we will send out an email to all attendees when the recording of the webinar is ready. And thank you. This concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.